Okay, I'm going to save you guys this fall some madness. Uh, First of all, we're going to talk about these Poulan saws, why they stall. A lot of times it's this, or it's the primer bulb, the primer thingy itself. Now, this poo saw, this guy, this yellow one here that I'm pointing to, this guy right here, okay, he's a little different than your normal Poulan saws, okay? We're talking about him first. They have these clip-in for the other saws, the primer bulbs. There's one in here somewhere. Here it is. Here's the little fella right here. Now, this little fella goes to your carburetor if you lose track of what you're doing, and that goes to your tank. That's that big line inside. Now we're going to talk about this. One's made in the Philippines, which is actual Targon line, and the other's made in China, which is this harder green stuff. When you're doing these saws, they're a different diameter. This softer, lighter green, see this is darker green, this is made to be pulled through. You're going to have a hard time with this on any other saw other than the green pull-ons that it's made for. This is made for the green, specifically sized for the green saw, but you can use this on the green ones too. I don't know why that is, but this, for the green pull-on saws, will not fit these yellow Pro Series. And also, I don't know how good this camera in your eyeball is going to be. As you can see, one is larger than the other. See that? That green line is larger in diameter on the inside. And that's why I make my videos when I scream, when I call someplace and I ask for the ID and the OD and, oh, what's that? Ah! What my customers saw never would have got stolen out of that truck if people knew sizes. And I got to show them everything. I got to go to the fucking auto parts store. I had to run around with that man's saw in my truck because there wasn't an idiot here that even knew what the fuck Targon line is. And it's part of the problem why I still smoke and I can't really calm down. I want you to pay attention to something that happened to me. You see, remember I told you I didn't know all about chainsaws and when I was doing those motorized bicycles, it goes back a long way, long way. I was doing motorized bicycles and I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground about two-cycle. I know engines. I know everything. There's nothing anybody's going to tell me about a V8 engine combination, about rings, bores, bearings. How to size a head, how to make a tighter combustion chamber. There's nothing that nobody's going to tell me about a V8 engine, or even 6 cylinders or 4 cylinders. I've created some monsters like Holly Ann over there with a steroided 6 cylinder 300. What I'm telling you is, what I found out in my capacity is if you have the slightest leak or seep, which you may not have on a cold start, okay? It's when that line gets hot and it starts expanding and contracting, then the saw, it loses pressure and it needs the tank pressure. See, this has a brand new cap on it. I'm going to show you this. When you're building up too much pressure when you let it sit out in the sun or your saw gets really hot, a lot of times your restart problem, it's either the fuel lines, this cap, it's rarely ever the primer bulb. But those little primer units can go bad. And these are not a clip-in style. These have two bolts or two screws that hold that in. And that's simply because of the kooky way that, let's go Ace, you want to knock my saws over? I've had enough bad luck this week. I'm an idiot, especially trusting these cats. The cats got attacked. One of my cats is dead. The other one just came back from the vet. And she's back to normal, believe it or not. She just won't, she's afraid to go outside. He's not. But he came out pretty much unscathed. I think he was just more scared of what happened. But he's coming in at night now. I think he learned his lesson. Okay, let's get to this home light. Remember I told you I didn't know everything about, I did not know everything about two-cycle engines. I just didn't. Okay? So I bought books and I did some experiments. You see, when something's mine, I think I told you when I buy products and different products and stuff, I'll try it on my stuff first because I'm not going to sell it to somebody and I ruin their piece of equipment or I ruin their vehicle, just like that lousy clear coat. But that home light stopped running and I put a carburetor on it and it did not start. It didn't start. I just tucked it under the workbench. I put fresh gas in it the other day and I figured I'm going to crack the screws 2 turns on the low and the high on it. Didn't even touch the idle, okay? Because I had to do that on this one to make it run right. I'm out almost 2 turns on this yellow saw. When you open these two saws up, the carburetors are identical. The engines, the carburetors are identical. Identical. This says it's made in, I think, North Carolina. Where did it say? No, yeah, it's made in Charlotte, North Carolina, this home light. This is a 3850 DD. But I'll tell you something. This has just as much snot, if not more, than my steel. The only thing that steel that I saw that I hate so much has for it, it has a lot smoother cutting. It doesn't jump around with the cut like this one will. But I've just discovered something else. Sharpening my chains and increasing that pitch from like 20 degrees on a 72 tooth chain or 68 tooth, changing that pitch a little bit sharper to 23 degrees and cutting a little bit more of a point on the chisel, what they call the chisel. And that's a full chisel, as you can see. That's a good chain, but it's not an aggressive chain. It's a narrow cut chain. So a narrow cut chain is also, if you don't know what you're doing, you do not want narrow kerf chains. Everybody says they're better. They're faster. Not in my opinion. And when you're cutting wood up on the ground, you're more than likely going to lose RPM and pinch the saw. You see, that's what happened to my the one Husqvarna that got stolen. That one was in the truck because it needed. I beat that into the ground since the day I had it, and it still ran. That's why I didn't like losing it. What happened is that saw taught me a lesson. I was originally going over to Lowe's and just getting whatever they had off the shelf until I started getting these more aggressive chains, and it smooths the cuts out. So today this home light's going to get another chain. And believe it or not, that is still the factory chain. That saw quit running the year after I bought it. I think I bought that in 2014. I'm pretty sure I bought that in 2014. But anyway, I'm doing cleaning in my shop is what I'm doing, and I've got food I want to make. So I'm going to go to the store, and I just wanted to explain to you that that saw had quit. And I knew it was the carburetor. How did I know it was the carburetor? Well, I had spark. And if you have spark and you have fuel, or you allegedly have no fuel, I could feel that it was not drawing the fuel. So I figured it was a combination of those fuel lines and just take the carburetor. I did not replace, I think I said I put a new carburetor on. I did not. I put new fuel lines on it and I put a carb kit. I got it because it's the same Walboro carburetor on that 3850 that this Poulan takes. It's the exact same. It's the exact same everything except for the spark coil. Everything but the spark coils. This now runs excellent. That now runs excellent. And we're going to give you an update on this burgle situation. My insurance ain't covering it. I got fire, theft, and vandalism. I got comprehensive on my truck, on the Ford. And I already knew. I called because my dad sells, what do you want to call it? He used to sell annuities. He used to sell those until he found out they were junk bonds and pretty much worthless and mutual funds. But he also sold insurance. And he says to me, since he's a rep for the company, whatchamacallit, Hart, I think it's Hart, it's part of Hartford. And he says to me, no, your truck is insured as a separate entity as your property. Even if it was a break in on your property and it was in the vehicle, it falls under the truck. That's a separate entity of insurance where it happened because there's damage to the truck. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, if something happens to the home or in the home, is the homeowners. Okay, there are what do they want to call other events related to property, like a trips and falls, but it has nothing to do uh, with anything like that. If somebody steals my tractor, my lawn tractor, there's a list of stuff. He has a litany, a list is what he was explaining to me. So basically, my insurance company, State Farm, is now screwing me. I hate to tell you, I told you so, but I knew this was going to happen. But I already called, besides my dad, I called the rep for Hart. What the hell was his name? Vid, Vin, Vin, Vitali, rather. His name was Vitali. That's, I guess, Russian or Yuki. But he was a nice guy. And he said, no. He said, we would gladly cover it. He said, if it was in the home, he said, if it was outside your truck. But he says, we're not covering the damage either to the vehicle because there's 2 chunks out of the paint on the truck. The trucks, it was parked next to the other truck, and I think that's how they were getting the stuff out of the truck and sneaking, is between the 2 vehicles. That's what, because my neighbor said he saw flashlights and stuff down here. He had it on his video. I saw it, but all you could do is make out that there was flashlights in the driveway. So I'm not going to hook. I'm going to hook up a little surprise today. I've gotten some other things cleared up, but I wanted to make this video on the stalling problems. A lot of it's related to those fuel lines, not to mention some of the factory lines, especially the newer, your newer Poulan saws from like about 2010 to about 2023, 22 in there. They had those fuel lines that decayed inside out, and it sucked it up inside the carburetor. The shop that I'm affiliated with that did a few boneheaded things to me. We're now talking again a little bit, and the guy's like, Josh is nice. He came from the roofing vein of things, but he told me, yeah, he says if it sucks it up inside the carburetor, it's half and half whether you're going to get the saw to run with that carburetor again. He says it depends on whether you clean it out. So I soaked the carburetor for the one Poulan that I fixed. I soaked it in MEK overnight, and then I put it in. I made my own tank. It vibrates a little bit. I made it out of an RC car motor. I made like a rocker with it, and you just turn it on, and it just continually rocks. And I was surprised when I looked in the bottom. I saw debris in the bottom, and I figured I got the crap out of it, and I did. I have all kinds of homemade stuff. You saw, I think, what I did with that chain sharpener. So now that saw is going to get another chain, and it'll probably work, and it'll probably cut right, because I don't like its cut. It wants to jump around when you go to bite into the wood. It wants to kick and jump. And ever since I've been sharpening these chains on a different pitch, I've had a lot better luck. All right, but the bad news is the chain's not going to last as long. So I'm not wasting your time with my video. If you want some pertinent information, usually the coil makes it stall, not the carburetor, okay? Or it's your fuel flow at the carburetor caused by those Targon lines, okay? And remember what I told you. They make the real Targon line is made in the Philippines, as far as to my knowledge, what I've been told by 2 different dealers. But it could be made in China by now, but it used to be made in the Philippines. This other darker green stuff, this is being made exclusively for Husqvarna, for Poulan saws, because Husqvarna, as I told you, took over Poulan. And good luck contacting Husqvarna. You have a better chance of talking to God. They got a lot of out of me from saws that did not start during that was during the Obama years there. You'd buy a saw and it would run once and it would never start up again. And nobody could figure out. The one place down here, they had my saw for a better part of 3 months. And I went to Lowe's and I told them, I had a couple incidents at Lowe's. One where I ran over some lawn tractors with my truck. Not ran over, but ran into them. Anyway, they pissed me off. They didn't want to refund me on his power equipment. That it would start up, it would run once, and it would never run again. Well, I'm glad we're out of COVID. I'm glad we're done with Joe Biden. And I'm very disappointed, like I said, in my president for not helping the seniors and stuff like he's doing. What he's doing is shooting himself in the foot, especially for the Republicans for the next elections and the next cycle. But you know what? Let him shoot himself in the foot. Let him make promises he's not going to keep. People just ain't going to vote for him. As a matter of fact, I'm afraid what's going to happen, voting is going to be an abysmal turnout because nobody likes the communist turds that are running, except for certain minorities that they want to believe in Santa Claus is coming to town. Just like the U.S. Marines are coming to town in Venezuela down there. They like to dupe, and I'm not just talking black people or Spanish or whatever. It's not an ethnic thing. It's just stupid, lazy people. They want to believe in Santa Claus, and they think Santa Claus is going to deliver all of their future. We do need to get the rents under control, and we need to get the food, the fuel prices, taxes, everything needs to come back under control. Not stop paying for the Jews' wars overseas. They need to be better neighbors. They need to learn their lesson, and we need to vote them out. You got a Jew state rep, Jew governor, don't vote for him. And remember, I'm half Jewish. I talk like that. I even talk like that to my elders. Uh, you see, when they made me a commander on board that Navy ship, maybe it was the worst thing they did to me. But one thing it told me was, I know what I'm doing in life, and the way I handle myself, the way I've been natured, look out, especially if you piss me off. It's just the way I am. But my job was saving lives and making people see the reality in things, and it's part of why I'm glad for, and I thank YouTube, because people get different opinions, different advice. Just like I told you, your saw heats up and it starts stalling. It might just be in those fuel lines, and don't be afraid when you have that carburetor out of there to replace them. Don't be afraid to take it apart, soak it a little bit, clean it out with carb cleaner. So that's what I'm buying today. I'm going to the store. I'm going to buy carburetor cleaner, and then I got to get some stuff for my food that I'm making today. Thanks for watching my videos, and take my advice on what makes a saw run, because like that one died a year old, and it was really, you can see the muffler has rust on it. I'm going to take you off. That's a unique story. We had that bad storm there in 2015, and I went in, I got a phone call. That's back when there was landlines, and they were calling for snow, but I was cutting up wood out here, and in between the half hour or three-quarter hour long phone call, I came out, there was like 6 inches of snow. I almost couldn't find the saw. I couldn't find my sledgehammer. I was still splitting wood by hand then. I couldn't find my wedges. I was like, I could not believe in 45 minutes time we had that much snow on the ground, and the only thing that stuck out, how I found the saw, was the muffler had melted most of the snow, and there was like a little, like a gray patch from the whatever contacting the metal, and that's how that muffler got all rusty like that. So if you even look at the top, I don't know what I did with it. This saw, it's brand new. Like I said, I used that saw for 3 months. It took a shit, and I'm finally going to put a spark plug in it. Look, take my advice on each and everything that I say. It comes from my heart. I don't tell people to pull their saws apart. If you run that saw, it's hot and it dies, take that cover off, take all the bullshit out, the air filter cover, uncover that and look down in there, and 9 chances out of 10 you're going to see fuel. You're going to see moisture. It's wet down there. It's not oil, that's fuel. And a lot of times, if you're using synthetic mix, the bottles, I've been noticing, and I just had a talk when I was down there at that other shop, we're seeing that the oil is separating from the gasoline. And most of that is because of the ethanol and the moisture content that's in the pump gas. That's why I use the premixes, because that doesn't happen to them. But that's what he was telling me. He's getting a lot of burned up saws lately. And then he just finally started taking notice to those mixes. So if you're still mixing your own gas, you might want to consider not doing that anymore. And just so you know, most of these machines are saying 50 to 1 fuel. Most of my stuff, even if it says 50 to 1, it runs better on 40 to 1. And I'm looking inside with my bore scope. I'm not hurting my motors. My motors are perfectly fine inside. There's not one saw that has any pitting, any scoring. And I did use gas mix at one time, and I had the saws ran on it. They ran good. I mix a batch of gas up today. Those saws run like shit. I have no other explanation other than thank you for watching my videos and take my advice this fall. If you're going to get that saw going, the first thing you do is dump that old gas out. When you park your saw, doesn't matter when, make sure there's premix in it. Okay, what happens is when you dump the gas out, if you take that old timer's advice, you're not dealing with rubber fuel lines anymore, stuff that lasts. That targon will shrink, it'll shrivel up, and those lines will leak. Okay, especially those friction lines that go through the plastic tank. That's called a friction connection. Don't do it. Leave fuel in it and just dump it out next spring. And my advice is leave a full tank so those lines are saturated. It'll coat the lines, and if you move the saw around like I do when you clean in the winter or whatever, I shake the box and make sure that fuel sloshes around on those fuel lines. I had no idea that saw would be 3 months old and it would die just from decayed fuel lines. But I don't know how old that saw was. I can't really read that serial number. I might have to go on the HomeLight website. That's a ZR series, and I'm telling you, I bought that at least 2014 or 2015. But I do remember it was either 14 or 15. Like I said, we had a whopper of a storm that came in overnight, and that thing got buried, and like I said, it never ran again. And up until this week, I pulled it apart. Sorry about the road noise. Got a lot of construction going on here. There's hardly any work traffic. Normally, work traffic would wake me up at 6 o'clock and get me out of bed. Hardly any work traffic. What I'm hearing now is probably work traffic and people doing things. Thanks for watching my videos. Take my advice on these Poulan saws. Go over those fuel lines, replace them. And it took me, I got a big kit on Amazon. They're like 11, 12 bucks. Has the primer bulbs, fuel filters, all that stuff for $12, $13. And it had the right fuel line for this saw. And it had the right fuel line for this saw. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to order another one of those kits. Those are oddball sized Targon line, and I could not buy it locally. That's how those saws got stolen out of my truck, not to mention other things. And just so you know, State Farm. If you have State Farm, I'm going to look for another insurance company. Thanks.